Coming up today, finally some very welcome news on the trade front. Korea's exports post their first on-year rise in more than a year and a half in August. Outbound shipments jump 2.6%. Korea's ruling and opposition parties agreed to approve an almost $10 billion extra budget plan aimed at giving the sluggish economy a shot in the arm. Plus, the Brazilian Senate votes overwhelmingly to dismiss President Dilma Rousseff. Senators find her guilty of illegally tampering with the budget 2 years ago to hide a growing deficit. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Thursday, the 1st of September. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Mark Broom. We are going to start with the breakthrough at the National Assembly. Korea's political parties have reached an agreement on a multi-billion-dollar supplementary budget after marathon talks to resolve their differences over where to spend the extra funds. They'll seek to approve it in the coming hours. Our Shin Se-min starts us off.
Korea's three major political parties have finally seen eye to eye on the extra budget plan after crunch talks that went late into Wednesday night. The ruling Saenuri Party, the main opposition Minju Party of Korea, and the minor opposition People's Party reached a compromise on how to spend the $9.8 billion supplementary budget. The budget, which the parties originally agreed to approve on Wednesday, was held up over the main opposition party's insistence that a large chunk of the funds be spent on education programs. The Minju Party also said some money should be allocated to help South Korean firms locked out of the now shuttered Inter-Korean Kaesong Industrial Complex in North Korea. In their final agreement, the rival parties decided to funnel nearly $180 million into education facilities and make efforts in the future to compensate the South Korean firms with facilities in Kaesong. Based on their agreement, the parties will approve the supplementary budget at a plenary session scheduled for 2 p.m. Korea time. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Now to some good news rolling in on the trade front. Korea's exports have finally made a turnaround, putting to an end a record 19 straight months of decline. The positive growth comes as shipments of Korea's key export items hit a high for the year. For more on what could be the start of a new momentum for the country's exports, Kim Min-ji reports.
It's a rise for the first time in 20 months. The Trade Ministry says the country's outbound shipments rose 2.6% in August from a year earlier to $40.1 billion. After falling for 19 straight months since January of last year, the turnaround provides a glint of light for the country's exports, once the economy's main pillar. The gain comes on the back of strength in Korea's key export items, such as semiconductors and petrochemical goods, which hit their highest point for this year. Another contributing factor was additional working days in August. Imports also rose just slightly, but for the first time in nearly 2 years. Inbound shipments edged up 0.1% on year to $34.8 billion. That means a trade surplus of $5.3 billion, extending the surplus streak for a 55th straight month. While the ministry says expected improvements in unit prices and volume for key items give it a positive outlook for the latter half of the year, downside risks do linger. A possible U.S. interest rate hike could trigger market volatility and slow the global economic recovery, while a prolonged strike in Korea's auto industry could take a toll on exports. The government says it'll keep close tabs on those uncertainties and take necessary support measures to keep export growth in positive territory. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea's consumer price growth continues to remain rather sluggish due to low global oil prices. Statistics Korea says prices went up 0.4% in August from a year earlier, the slowest pace in almost 18 months. It also marks the fourth straight month of prices growing in the 0% range. Prices of petroleum products dropped nearly 9% from a year ago, dragging down overall prices by around 0.4 percentage points. Due to the sweltering heat wave, prices of agricultural, livestock and fishery products rose 1% last month from the previous year. Fishery goods in particular soared 6.5%. The ongoing corruption probe into Korean retail giant Lotte Group is expanding. The founder's eldest son and former vice chairman of Lotte Holdings in Japan, Shin Dong-joo, appeared this morning at the Supreme Prosecutor's Office for questioning. He's accused of embezzlement and receiving millions of dollars in unearned pay from Lotte Group affiliates. Questions will likely focus on how much money he received and where it was spent, but prosecutors were also likely to ask him about other allegations, including illegal financial transactions among Lotte affiliates and tax evasion. Shin is suspected of receiving more than $36 million over several years from Lotte Engineering and Construction, Lotte Hotel and other family firms. Now, the disgraced President of Brazil, Dilma Rousseff, has been impeached by the country's Senate. Brazilian senators voted overwhelmingly in favor of ousting her from office. Park Jong-hong has the latest.
The Senate vote immediately removed Brazil's first female president from office. Brazilian senators voted 61-20 to dismiss Dilma Rousseff, who was suspended back in May. Her vice president, Michel Temer, will serve as interim president until an election is held in 2018. Rousseff was impeached on charges of illegally tampering with the budget 2 years ago to hide a growing deficit in order to win re-election. The Senate vote marks the culmination of a controversial impeachment process that has dragged on for months. Even though the Senate's decision is a major blow for Rousseff, it may not mark the end of her political career. That's because a motion to bar her from holding any public office for the next 8 years failed to pass. In response to the Senate vote, Rousseff said that there was no constitutional justification for the impeachment. She called the entire affair a coup against her and her leftist party, pledging to fight back. Rousseff becomes just the second Brazilian leader in history to be dismissed from office. In 1992, Fernando Collor de Mello resigned before a vote in his impeachment trial for corruption. Park Jong-hong, Arirang News.
U.S. presidential hopeful Donald Trump has met with the president of Mexico in Mexico City in a move that stirred controversy on both sides of the border. Both said the meeting was constructive, but it's not clear to what extent they discussed Trump's plan for a wall along the US-Mexico border. Ian Shin has more.
Since the start of his presidential campaign, Donald Trump has never been shy about expressing his views on Mexico. While his visit to America's southern neighbor angered many, it was also viewed as a stroke of political genius by others. Trump's Democratic rival for the presidency, Hillary Clinton, mocked the trip, saying it'll take more than a photo opportunity to make up for insulting the Mexican people. Despite the critics, Trump and President Enrique Pena Nieto stood side by side at a press conference on Wednesday to discuss their closed-door conversation.
I also asked and showed Mr. Trump the great responsibility that I have to defend the Mexican population, both to Mexicans who are here and outside of Mexico.
He was apparently responding to Trump's previous statements on Mexican migrants and how they have threatened the jobs and the safety of American people. For his part, Trump said that he reiterated to Pena Nieto his intention to build a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border.
We did discuss the wall. We didn't discuss payment of the wall. That'll be for a later date. This was a very preliminary meeting. I think it was an excellent meeting.
In contradiction to that, President Pena Nieto later tweeted that he made it clear in the meeting that Mexico will not pay for the wall. Back in U.S. for a speech on immigration, Trump praised Pena Nieto as a man who loves his country and said that they both agreed in their meeting on the need to stop the flow of guns and drugs across the border. Ian Shin, Arirang News.
Now, Samsung Electronics has halted all domestic shipments of its new flagship phablet, the Galaxy Note 7. The Korean tech giant wants to carry out more quality control testing after some reports of the phone's battery exploding while while it charges. Kwon Jang-oh has the details.
It's been less than 2 weeks since the launch of the Galaxy Note 7, but now, as a precautionary measure, shipments of the Samsung phablet are being halted in Korea. Samsung Electronics is looking to investigate a handful of claims that have emerged on social media, saying the phablet had overheated and exploded while it was being charged. Samsung said it will take a look at those phones which were affected and carry out additional tests on product quality. The tech giant has not given any details on what testing it plans to carry out, but the problem appears to stem from the USB-C port, the first time the connector has been used on a Samsung smartphone. It's also unclear whether the issue is a software one, which means it could potentially be fixed with a firmware update, or whether it's a hardware one, which could mean a more costly product recall. The cause could also be non-compliant third-party cables, which have caused problems to other smartphone and laptop products in recent months. Samsung has not stated whether shipments to any international markets have been affected, with different regions having different variants of the phone. Demand for the Note 7 has been strong, with pre-orders reaching 400,000 units in Korea alone, double that of the previous incarnation, the Note 5. But with Apple expected to announce its new iPhone next week, the pressure is on for Samsung to deal with the issue quickly to maintain its sales momentum in the second half of the year. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
The Korean Coast Guard has resumed operations to drive out illegal Chinese fishing boats from the Han River estuary as peak crab season attracts more poachers. The Ministry of Public Safety and Security says it will increase the number of patrol ships from 4 to 11 in waters near the northern limit line. The Coast Guard will also beef up the number of special forces to 18 at the West Sea island of Yeonpyeong-do. Starting in mid-October, the Coast Guard will extend its crackdown on illegal Chinese fishing in Korea's exclusive economic zone, which covers much of the West Sea. Captured Chinese vessels involved in serious illegal activity will be handed over to China's maritime police. Korea has confirmed its third case of cholera in a man who had eaten seafood on the southern island of Geoje, the same, it turns out, as the previous 2 patients. The Korea Centers for Disease Control is looking into the possibility that a small part of the waters around Geoje Island could be contaminated with cholera bacteria. In the latest case, a 65-year-old man had consumed cooked seafood bought in a local market. About 100 residents of the island are also reportedly suffering from diarrhea, cholera's main symptom. But health authorities view the current situation as a, quote, sporadic outbreak and stress they're taking thorough and serious countermeasures to stop it from spreading. Now, Korea is always on the lookout for new markets for its food exports. One such market is Far Eastern Russia, and it helps that the region is home to people already well accustomed to Korean cuisine and culture. Kim Hyun-bin files this report from Vladivostok.
Since taking office as president for the first time at the turn of the century, Vladimir Putin has made it his goal to transform Vladivostok into the unofficial eastern capital of Russia. However, even to this day, Vladivostok remains virtually untouched by foreign influence, especially compared to other global cities.
There's not a single McDonald's or Starbucks here in Vladivostok, but you might be surprised to learn that most stores here carry Korean food products. Everything from kimchi to ramen noodles.
Many Korean companies are exporting their top-selling products to the city, and some are even tweaking the taste to better fit Russian taste buds.
The most popular products are ramen noodles, followed by Korean cookies. Other Korean snacks also sell well. Many Russians also like to incorporate Korean sauces into their traditional meals.
Korea has traded with Vladivostok and the rest of the Russia's Far East for centuries. Local residents have grown up with Korean products, so they are more open to Korean food and flavors than other parts of Russia.
Korean food is really popular in this region for 2 reasons. First, we're so close to South Korea. Second, there are lots of ethnically Korean Russians here and they like to stick to their heritage.
The Korea Trade Investment and Promotion Agency, which has an office in Vladivostok, says Korean food exports to the city and its surrounding areas has increased sharply over the past 5 years. It says the forecast in the coming years is bright as well. as the Russian ruble has become more stable after a turbulent few years. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News, Vladivostok.
Now back here in Korea, and bad news for smokers because people caught lighting up near subway exits in Seoul will now be fined up to 100,000 Korean won, or about $90. The Seoul city government has announced a special crackdown from September 1st today through the 9th, following the end of a grace period after the ban took effect back in May. The city's put 19 officials on patrol to catch anyone sparking up within 10 meters of the subway exit to prevent smokers gathering outside key stations, including Seoul Station and Gwanghwamun Station. The city will ask for the cooperation of nearby building occupants and move public trash bins. Well, that's all we have for now on this Thursday lunchtime here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. We will be back throughout the day with more newscasts. Our next bulletin is coming up at 3 p.m. Korea time. So until then, goodbye.